Where did you see this story? TikTok? YouTube? Maybe Facebook? Wherever you found it, drop it in the comments, because this one is going to leave you shaking your head. And trust me, it all ends with a twist that no HOA was ready for. Let me paint you a picture. A peaceful community nestled in the hills. Scenic walking paths. A clear little creek that winds along the edge of the neighborhood. It all looks like something out of a brochure. But let me tell you, behind the freshly painted fences and monthly newsletters is a power-hungry HOA board that thought they ran the whole world. They didn't. Not even close. And when they tried to shut down my project with fake authority, screaming nonsense about permits and jurisdiction, they didn't know one thing. I didn't just own the land. I owned everything upstream, including the water they were so eager to protect. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It all started when I bought a lot just outside the HOA boundary. A rugged, wooded property near the creek. I wasn't looking to build a mansion, just a modern, eco-friendly cabin with a garden and maybe a small footbridge crossing the stream. I'd done all the paperwork, filed the environmental impact assessments, and received every necessary permit from the city and county. What I didn't know was how territorial the HOA had become. Apparently, they had been managing the creek area for years. Even though it ran partially through public land and private lots, they claimed it was part of their natural resource conservation zone. Sounds official, right? Except there was nothing legal about it. Just signs they put up, themselves, and rules they invented. The trouble began on a Tuesday morning. I had just brought in a small bulldozer to clear a narrow path near the creek for access. Nothing major. No trees cut down. No banks disturbed. Just prepping the ground for a walking path and foundation stones. Within an hour, they showed up. 3 of them. Clipboards. Safety vests. One of them even wore a badge. Not a real police badge. Something plastic-looking with HOA security printed in faded letters. You need to shut that machine down. The lead guy barked, arms crossed. This is a protected conservation zone. You can't dig here. I stepped down from the cab. I have permits. This is my land. Doesn't matter, he snapped. You're within our watershed buffer. We manage this zone. That might be your story, I replied, pulling out the paperwork. But the county says otherwise. He barely glanced at it. That doesn't apply here. We filed community protections. I should have laughed. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I paused the work and called the city office. Explain what happened. They confirmed I was well within my rights. No violations. No restrictions. In fact, they were already familiar with the HOA's antics. They've pulled this before, the clerk sighed. But they have no legal enforcement. Just bluff and bluster. So I resumed work. 2 days later, I arrived on site to find caution tape strung across my property. Signs saying, stop work, HOA violation. They had trespassed, marked my land like it belonged to them. That's when I started digging into the HOA's so-called conservation zone. Turns out, the protected watershed they kept referencing, it wasn't in their legal purview. Not even close. The creek ran through a patchwork of public land and several private lots, mine included. They had no easements, no water rights, and certainly no control over upstream development. So I made a phone call to my lawyer, and then another, to a broker. 2 weeks later, I quietly closed a deal on 16 acres of undeveloped land upstream from the HOA community. It included the origin point of the creek, the actual watershed. I now own the source of their entire beloved stream. That was the turning point. I didn't block the water, of course. That would have been cruel. But I did start a legitimate environmental project. Tree planting, erosion control, and selective redirection for natural irrigation. All legal. All within my rights. And every change affected the flow downstream. Subtly, but noticeably, the HOA started getting complaints. Why is the creek lower? There's sediment in the water. Who authorized the changes? Karen. Yes, the actual HOA president's name was Karen. Came storming back onto my land. This time, she brought a local news team. This developer is destroying our community. He's damming our water. He's unregulated and dangerous. I stood calmly with my attorney. Actually, I told the reporter, I'm not a developer. I live here. I care about the land. Everything I've done is permitted, documented, and publicly approved. Unlike some people trespassing and issuing fake violations. Then I handed over the full report. Satellite maps, soil tests, the original city permits. a notarized copy of the deed. Also, I added, I own the entire upper watershed. That includes the land feeding the stream, which means their whole buffer zone flows through my property. The reporter blinked. Karen turned red. The news segment aired that night. The headline, HOA shuts down landowner with bulldozer, ends up powerless against actual property owner. That was when the city stepped in. Not against me. Against them. An investigation was opened into the HOA's enforcement practices. Turns out, they've been pushing rules outside their jurisdiction for years. Fines, threats, even liens. All without legal standing. Lawsuits followed. Residents started questioning everything. At the next HOA meeting, the board barely showed. Karen resigned live on camera. And me? I built my cabin, planted trees, created a small public trail, even installed a creek overlook. Families from the neighborhood now visit on weekends. And the best part? That same bulldozer I started with. I mounted a plaque on it. Respect property. Know the law. Stay in your lane. So next time someone tells you what you can and can't do on your land, check the title. They might be standing on your watershed.